Hello, I'm Kristen Dalton Wolf, and I am so happy that you're here because I want to help you thrive in your life. I want to help you get unstuck so you can achieve the dream that God has on your heart and you can become the woman that God wants you to be and who He created you to be and who you really want to be, because when you become who God created you to be, you're going to be way happier. You're going to be fulfilled. You're going to be content. And one of the things that steals your contentment is complaining. What if I told you that complaining changes your brain? It diminishes you, it darkens your sparkle, and it keeps you small. And a lot of us don't even realize that we're doing it because it has become a habit. And the way that this topic of complaining came up for me is because I've been reading in the book of Exodus to my daughter Aurora at night, and it's about the Israelites' journey from captivity to freedom. And what was supposed to be an 11-day journey, or what should have been an 11-day journey, proximity-wise, took them 40 years. And every time they got stuck, it was a result of two things. Number one, complaining, and number two, false idols. But complaining always happened first. And so what happened? I asked God, I was like, why was it that complaining was such a big deal to you, God? I mean, they did have like valid complaints. I mean, they were hungry, they were thirsty. And so I looked into the Greek and Hebrew etymology of the words complaining in Exodus. And lun, the Hebrew word lun, is one of those main complaining words. And what it really means is a habitual expression of dissatisfaction resulting from distrust and doubt. And so when you think of complaining, like today, when we say complain, we're talking about like expressing a mild dissatisfaction of like something annoying, right? But in the Bible, when it's talking about complaining, and in the book of Philippians, it says, do everything without complaining so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, and shine like stars. It's talking about getting into a state of habitual negativity where you have skepticism and bitterness, doubt, and distrust. And so complaining in our lives can lead to a solution. I mean, obviously, we don't want to be toxic, positive Pollyannas. And I think that's important to get clear on it, because we're not saying like never say, I feel tired, or it's really hot in here. Can we cool the temperature down? No, it's saying like, don't be habitual about it. Notice your recurring thoughts or your recurring words about some of the same things. Are you someone who's like always complaining about your dining experience? Are you always complaining that your husband doesn't pay enough attention to you? Are you always complaining when your social media posts don't perform how you want them to? Do you get into a place where you're doubting the vision or the call that God has put on your life? Like, that's what we're talking about here. And the reason why it matters so much is because in science, neuroscience shows us that complaining, it releases the stress hormone cortisol, which shrinks our amygdala and our prefrontal cortex. And our prefrontal cortex is where our memory is stored. And so complaining is scientifically and biologically shrinking our ability to retain the memory of God's faithfulness, which then leads to forgetfulness. And when we have forgetfulness, what do? Well, the Israelites show us that we erect false idols because we were looking for something to fill an empty place, to fill a place in our heart and soul that is empty. And our idols today don't necessarily look like statues, but they're more deceptive. They're a little more elusive. And that's where the enemy can get in when we're not so super clear on what is evil and what's bad in our life, because sometimes the idols in our life are good. They're good things, like our families, our children, our relationships, the opinions of others. because caring about the opinions of others can be a good thing, but when it's put on the throne above God, it's something that controls you. So really an idol in your life is anything that has your attention more than God, because when something has you, it has control over you. And when it has control over you, it's going to leave you barren and empty and insatiable, because nothing is ever going to quench your soul or to satisfy you the way that God is. And I don't know about you, but I just wonder, I'm like, why are we prone to this? Why are we prone to complaining and grumbling and not gratitude? Like, God, why'd you make us this way? And what I found was interesting is in neuroscience, studies have found that complaining releases a quick dopamine hit. So it creates this quick sense of pleasure, because complaining gives us this false sense of control, because we're in this place of judging something. And so it gives us this quick moment of pleasure. But when you do it habitually, it actually starts to rewire negative neural pathways in your brain. And our brain is always looking for shortcuts for our own thriving and survival. It starts to become our default response. And when it becomes our default response, like it was becoming for the Israelites, it diminishes us, it dims us, it shrinks our literal brain and makes us more prone to idolatry. And idolatry is one of those things where like, it's just going to take you out of your life. And I've become more aware, because I don't really want my journey to what God has called me to become or to be or to do to take 40 years when it could take 11 days. I don't want it to take longer than it has to. And the reason the whole story of the Israelites is in the Bible is because it's a metaphor of humanity. It's a metaphor of our hearts. And Aurora and I, my daughter and I, we find ourselves being like, they forgot again, or they complained again. And we're like, how could they do that? Like, why do they keep doing the same thing over and over again? Like, don't they know the cycle? Haven't they seen it by now? And every time we're like, well, that's us. I'm like, oh, well, that's me. Like, where have I forgotten God? Like, because we have this negativity bias in our brain to look for problems so we can protect ourselves, so we can survive, right? God wants to be chosen. It's like he's created us in this way where we have to be intentional. In order to have a relationship with God and all the good things that you get from relationship with God, you have to choose him. There are no shortcuts. Like, we're always looking for shortcuts, There's no shortcuts with him. Like, you have to spend time with him. We have to spend that quality time. And I haven't been spending the quality time that I need and that I want and that produces beautiful fruit in my life lately. And so that's why this has really been standing out to me. So here's the thing. Complaining is not just venting. It is a red flag. It's a warning sign that should prompt you to ask the questions. What am I fearing? What am I doubting? Do I trust God? And what am I idolizing? And that's a good thing, because when you reveal what has control over you, then you can finally get control over it. And you can start to rewire your brain and say no to grumbling, no to complaining, no to that like skepticism that's starting to creep into your soul and your mind and your words. That is really like, you think you're expressing dissatisfaction, but what it's really doing is causing an environment of discontent and dissatisfaction within you. The good news is grace is always available to us. And every time the Israelites realized their fault, they realized like, whoops, we made a mistake. We complained too much. We erected this false idol, which usually, by the way, they realized that mistake through bad things happening. If there is some of that going on in your life, it could just be a good indicator that you might need to take an evaluation of your mind and what's going on. So every time that the Israelites did remember God, that they did come back to him, he was like, okay, I love you. My grace is extended. We can do this again. And his favor came back upon them. So know that that is possible. You can rewire your brain through gratitude, through spending time with God, because gratitude releases oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical that bonds you to God, which is so sweet. Your brain can change when you choose gratitude over grumbling, faith over fear, and trust in God over the idols of this world, whatever it might be for you. And so your call to action today is to ask yourself, what are the things that I habitually complain about? And this might be something that you just become aware of over the next week. Just kind of catch those moments and take note of them. Maybe write them down in your notepad in your phone so you can become aware, because those are things that are going to reveal a deeper issue to you or a deeper idol to you. And realize that you can be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and your spirit will be set free. So I love you, and I really hope that this helped you today. I would love to hear from you. Follow me on Instagram at Kristen J. Dalton. If you would like one-on-one coaching, you can reach out to me at Kristen via email, kristen@sheismore.com. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you next week.